Hi, everyone. Welcome again to another DevRev Live. Today, I have the pleasure of having with me two of our fine engineers here at DevRev. We've got Peter and Jonathan. Welcome, guys.
How's it going?
Hi, welcome.
Yeah. So today, I'm very excited because what we're going to see is a sneak peek, if you will, and how our engineers are using some of the modern tool set. You've heard the term AI, IDE, and it's not one tool; it's many tools that have started to come up and change the way people write code, test code, deploy, and actually build out their ideas. And I think some of the concepts behind these, whether it's the specific tools, maybe plugins, skills, MCP, and many other tools that you've probably heard of, we're going to see them go hand in hand with some real use cases that perhaps people are working with. And so both Peter and Jonathan are ready to show us some really interesting things. Perhaps, Jonathan, we can start with you if you've got something to share. First of all, maybe a quick. I know you're working from our applied AI angle, so you're doing a lot more forward deployed engineering at the time. So let's maybe have a look at your screen and see what type of problems you're looking at day to day.
Yeah, thanks, Amit. So yeah, I work mostly with customers and trying to help bring their use cases, bring them to life. This can include things like agents, workflows, dashboards. What we want to show you today is basically a dashboard requirement, where a customer said, hey, I want a dashboard that gives me some statistics around articles. And so this is a ticket that might come into our system. This is just a test ticket, so no real customer data here, but this would show potentially requirements that would come in about building this dashboard. And so this is an issue within our system. And so part of the automation that we take today is that we want to figure out a way that we can take that requirement, build a plan, and then leverage, in our case, Claude Code plugin to actually generate that dashboard from zero all the way to deploy. And so taking this issue here, we basically, I use the MCP server. We have that's exposed through DevRev. And so now we can pull in a bunch of different operations. But one of them is, hey, I can actually pull that ticket down or that issue. And so that's what you're looking at now is the description of that issue. And this is sort of a human in the loop. I mean, we could automate this entire flow, but right now we don't feel confident enough that, hey, it's going to generate the plan that's exactly right and then generate the dashboard. So right now there's a human in the loop check to take a look at this plan and say, okay, is this what we want? And we can make adjustments here if we want, but we have already looked at this, reviewed it, and now we feel it's good. We create a markdown file that we can now pass to our Claude Code process. And so coming into that, let me show you a little bit about the plugin's already installed, but let me show you how you would do that. So you could come in here now and use the plugin command, and you have a marketplace, and you see there's the Claude Code official one, and then if you see this other one, we have the DevRev Applied AI plugin. In this case, it has dashboards. So what we'll do is we've got that markdown file, and so what I'll do is I'll pass a command and say, hey, Claude, why don't you create a plan, or in this case, it's very similar to a PRD, a very detailed view of what is required to create a dashboard. And then that plan is going to have everything from the data sets to use. So it's going out and figuring out based on those requirements, okay, and in these data sets that we have in the DevRev platform, which are the ones it needs to use to create these views. Then it needs to decide how many widgets am I going to show on this dashboard? How many tabs am I going to have? What's the SQL going to look like? What are the fields and data types? So that's what it's going to do. It's going to take a few minutes to kick this off. So, I don't know, we can go back to Peter if we'd like and let this run a bit and then maybe jump.
Before we do that, I know this is going to take a couple of minutes. I want to use this opportunity since it's basically working for us. I wanted to maybe just stop there and maybe add some commentary and then also hear from Peter as well. So first thing is just to recap where you started. You started with, let's say, an issue or a ticket, which is where a lot of developers start their day. Where they have a new requirement that comes in through a canonical system. Perhaps it has a user interface, like you showed us a record, right, or a list view, and that list view maybe their sprint, and you can see all the different items in the sprint, and of course you can click on one of them and actually see all the work that perhaps goes into creating the work that needs to happen. In this particular case, somebody's asking you to create the dashboard, and of course, for the purposes of today, you didn't necessarily show us a customer ticket; you just created a ticket for the purposes of this demo. Now, once you have that information, rather than you having to interact directly with that user interface, what you've done is actually using a tool that has MCP built in. You've used DevRev's MCP server, which we have talked about in the past. You've used DevRev's MCP server to go extract that information programmatically. Once you have that information, the reason to programmatically access information is so that you can trigger your automation. And the automation that you have triggered is one that basically takes the details of the ticket, make sure that they're sufficient to actually create a plan, and then to actually use your plugin, which has, among several skills, the ability to actually create effectively a product requirements document out of that ticket. And the reason to create that product requirements document is not for a human to consume it, but for your next step, which is going to be for a coding agent to effectively consume it in order to actually write code, which we haven't seen yet. So right now we are at that step where you have shown that there is a specific plugin that was created, which basically brings in a set of skills that probably you and many of your team members are using. And in this particular case, writing a dashboard or building a dashboard is about creating widgets, putting them together, assembling a dashboard. So there's a bunch of APIs that go into doing this. And for each sort of create API call that you make, you have to be able to assemble what type of graph you want, what type of time series, where is the data source. So there's a bunch of stuff that's probably fairly well understood by you, and it's very well documented. And so it would make for a pretty good plugin skill. Am I right?
Absolutely. And, you talked just enough. It actually looks like we've completed that plan. So if you come over, I'm actually just showing this in my cursor view, but like this is the detailed plan that it created. And so, has a purpose, has all the different widgets that are in here. I don't want to go into all the depth, but, like I was saying, it gets all the different details that'll be needed to now pass it. And then it'll be able to create this entire thing, has a ton of detail, all the different pieces. So anyway, this is what we would pass to our, in a second when we want to generate the dashboard, which takes a little bit of time. This is what we'll give like a PRD, and then it'll be able to take it all the way from 0 to all those widgets and then deploying it, and we could show the final dashboard in the platform at the end.
So why don't we do that? Like, why don't you actually trigger the next skill, which is effectively going to take this as an input and create a dashboard? So why don't you trigger that? And while you're doing that, we'll come back to you, Jonathan, but maybe it's a perfect time to switch over. And Peter, what do you want to show us while we're creating a dashboard?
Sure. Yeah. So in my case, I can show you, let's say, how I approach different, tickets, tasks, which I get like in my engineering, day-to-day life. I guess, maybe what's different in my case is like I very often get more kind of, let's say, spikes or some new task, which I have to just figure out like how to do, right? Mm-hmm. And I think nowadays, engineers can actually take much more responsibility in terms of, let's say, building the whole platform, right? Or creating more complex things. So I wanted actually just to show you how this complexity can grow. And in this simple case, which I did actually that my weekend kind of, let's say, hacking together. But in this case, I wanted to build a kind of, let's say, gateway for my call AI agent so I can use and chat with WhatsApp. I don't have any experience, writing gateways or writing this all together, or even actually kind of, WhatsApp integrations or maybe a chat. So that's why usually when I kind of start those kind of, let's say, the research, I will just, chat with chat GTP or whatever you like. Even you try to even record myself, all my thoughts, what I would like to kind of really do here. What are my kind of constraints? So for example, I use Node, TypeScript. I would like to kind of connect with my WhatsApp. So I'll just share all my, requirements for this particular ticket. And I will ask actually ChatGPT to generate maybe the prompt for Codex. I use Codex in this case to create this repository for me, to kind of, kickstart the project for me.
And Peter, if I may add there, just to if I may, what I would say is effectively, we're not going to be able to show it a spike you're doing at work. We don't want to necessarily reveal anything we don't want to. So for the purpose of this, what we're showing is, let's just say a fictitious weekend project where, and just so everybody knows, and by the way, if you guys want to continue this conversation, with Peter and Jonathan, you can join us on our Discord server. I think we'll put the link up here as well. And you guys can join us on our Discord community, and you'll have access to all of us, and we can have a nice chat. But coming back to Peter, Peter's actually a front-end engineer. So, the idea of being able to integrate with gateways or perhaps APIs coming from different, products out there, whether it's WhatsApp or something else. Those are probably not things that you're doing day to day, but here, because you're able to sort of dabble with so many different technology stacks without necessarily being very familiar with them, you start to feel like this is all available to you to experiment with. So what you've done is effectively thought about the idea of what if I could write code from the convenience of some sort of a chat app that I've got installed on my mobile phone. And so, it's not maybe exactly what you would be doing for work, but it's a project that requires enough complexity and probably enough lines of code that, we wanted to test out how effective it would be trying to do it using these modern AI IDE tools with very low levels of familiarity with what it would require to do so. So where do you start?
Yeah, exactly. So I think, again, kind of just brainstorming this and asking kind of, AI to actually ask you questions like about things you forget maybe to consider, or like we need to kind of make a decisions. Yeah. So, this is kind of how the whole prompt was prepared. And then I got like those first questions, right? Like what kind of provider I want to use for my WhatsApp. I wasn't aware I have to use any, right? I thought that maybe I can access this directly.
That's right.
The same for like, how we are going to store the messages, for kind of those kind of making sure that we can restart our conversation or have multiple threads. So again, this is quite complex, let's say, solution. And I could actually just kind of, again, brainstorm this with AI and just like try to understand like how this could, flow, like what's the architecture I want to kind of, let's say, have in here, so I can actually dive deeper when I want and really kind of, just add code on top of it.
And it's quite educational as well, right? I mean, because like you said, you didn't necessarily know that you even needed a provider. And these are things that you don't necessarily have to know unless this is your domain. And so now as a person who's really a domain expert in your own right, you're able to learn about different things that you probably had no idea. And the level of curiosity that you demonstrate using these tools takes you a long way in terms of being able to learn new things. I'm sure you learned several things while building this, and it didn't take you very long, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this is why I have those weekend kind of, let's say, challenges. So actually I can learn, I just like understand different patterns so we can actually reuse this with our agents and then so on. So yeah. Again, like going back to this one, I think, understanding and just like outlining, what you want to build, be clear about this and agreeing kind of, let's say, architecture upfront, which will save you a lot of time later down the line, which I will show you. But even like, at this point where you have this, let's say, specification, the next step is to go to build this. And I think this is where I actually spend more of my time in the past by actually just kind of helping AI just to go to the next step, right? But yeah. I think now actually you can do maybe additional tweaks in terms of, let's say, how you're going to execute the prompt. So first of all, like I will actually at some point say, hey, those are like all the requirements, just go and build this and report back when it's all working. So when the server is running, there's no errors and everything. And I think that's important because actually AI will just keep on going until it's done. So, maybe a couple tips here. So first of all, I think, using probably the higher version of the language you want to kind of do, you have provided, like in this case is Codex. I think actually really makes difference. Medium is probably not that great at this point because you want more details. So that's one way to kind of set up, let's say, your config here. But then also, what's actually important, if you actually go to command line, I think, I'm not sure actually that's available in the Codex app, but in my Codex CLI, there's this kind of configuration where you can actually give full access to the agents. So they can actually kind of go and modify things. They can actually go and read maybe more documentation. So you don't have to approve this. So with this configuration and maybe also like trying experimental options, again, probably you have to be aware about, all the implications. But, again, using the sub agents or actually kind of helping agents to kind of, navigate on its own is really crucial because now when I will ask, to build this, it will actually spend maybe another hour to actually build everything all together, right? So yeah. I don't have to be there like in the past. I don't have to kind of, keep on pushing and actually my hour is kind of wasted. I can actually just go and do something else. So yeah, that's maybe another really important kind of, let's say, aspect of like,
Yeah.
being able to do much more.
And of course, like one of the reasons why you kind of are showing us something that you've done in the past is because it does take some time to get this code written. I mean, we're seeing that with Jonathan. So since you have the code written, can you actually show us like after this entire vibe coding session, what came out of it?
Yeah. So this vibe coding session was quite long. I think, again, that shows that, you can keep on adding and, modifying your code. Overall, this is the final code which I've managed to kind of generate. And I actually really like it. I think, the architecture here is very clean. There's like clear separation between, different adapters, configuration, orchestrator, so I can actually approve maybe like additional comment if I want to. I wanted to actually have additional diffing mechanisms so I can see better like how, what kind of changes were done by the agent.
Yeah.
And the same with like adapters, right? So I actually started with WhatsApp integration, but I just realized that, I don't like the kind of, let's say, maybe constraint of the WhatsApp. And I decided, okay, let's try maybe something else. Let's kind of, let's say, jump to writing additional integration with Slack, which again was really, really simple. Pretty much, again, I just, ask AI to kind of outline kind of the mechanism for it, and then guide me through all the configuration, right? So I think how to configure even the Slack, right? So what kind of permission I need to set so I can really have the conversation I really wanted, so I can test all the options. So again, it was like very easy.
Sorry, and you said that you found it very well organized. Did you have to prompt it particularly, with intention to get that organization, or is that just something that came out of the box?
I think, partially it came out of the box. I think at the same time, I actually give it some other repository, which I liked, and I wanted to actually kind of structure it the same way. So I asked like how you're going to structure things, and just making sure that, again, it's something I can consume and then, just take it to the next level.
Yeah. Now tell me about, obviously you talked about the fact that, it's not just wasting your 1 hour while it's churning out code because of the way you've actually set up your options here, the way you've configured it to actually be able to proceed without having to constantly, have the human in the loop. Are there any aspects of this flow where, I mean, other than, going back and forth with the coding or the prompts, is there anything else where you do like to be involved, or do you like it to just kind of create something and then you'll just review it yourself and then ask it to make some adjustments?
Yeah, I guess, it depends on, let's say, how much attention I need to actually put into details. But I think, what's actually quite nice right now, you can see all the changes as you go, right? So you can see what was added. So you can kind of have a control. You can actually ask, additional specific changes to the code directly in the app right now. So it's, again, quite nice. You can actually have the full control. But, let's be honest. I mean, this app now is like around 42,000 lines of code. So I don't think you can actually really review everything here. And again, you can use agent to actually review the code, the final code, right? So you can, again, use the AI to kind of just double check everything you do. So, you're pretty much safe to go and, keep on pushing this to production, really.
Yeah, and I saw that, I believe there's a command, if you want to do a peer review and so on and so forth as well, right?
Yeah, so usually kind of my workflow would be that at some point I will say, hey, I'm ready to kind of push the code. I have my kind of, let's say, skill, very basic, when I ask like, just go and just review the code against the main branch, and then also run necessary tests and lints. So it's everything ready to go, and also like my CI/CD pipeline won't reject this. But I think, there's also like one more thing which I wanted maybe to show you guys, because I think this is probably the biggest game changers, like in actually last couple of days.
Okay.
Because right now you can also do things in parallel. I think, in this case, right, like I have like 1 hour for free. I can go and just work on maybe some other ticket on like some maybe new feature, right? So right now, usually I would kind of have like multiple terminals open. Maybe I will actually have another repository, clone the same repositories, but another version, so I can, have more conversations, let's say. But now, as well in the Codex app, you can start new work tree, which kind of sandbox the this repository in another kind of, let's say, stream. So I can have separate conversations. So in this simple case, I've asked like to modify maybe README, but you could then modify pretty much the same files. And I think right now, if you try to do on the same your local version, then AI will kind of go confused because it will actually see those additional changes. So in this case, I can have multiple work streams, and then when I'm ready, I can just push this, of course, to Git and have like as a separate branch. But I could do the kind of handoff mechanisms here, so I can say, hey, just copy this to my local, and those changes are applied to my local version. So in this case, I can really do like 2, 3, 5 things at the same time, and I'm not really blocking myself, which I think is really a big win for all of us, because that was the main pain point so far for me, having multiple terminals open.
Yeah, and I mean, like, do you have an example of like multiple terminals open, what that used to look like, or anything like that?
I mean, yeah, I use different tabs and having different terminals here open. So just jumping between all of them, running different tests, and I think again, you can actually ask your agents to actually just watch your test runner, and then whenever they're like test broken, like just go and do it, right? So don't report back, hey, this is done, because it's not done, right? And I think again, this is where I spent most of my time in the past, because I was kind of more operator. Right, I was like kind of checking, okay, this works, or this doesn't really work. Go back and just like refix this. So I think having those kind of guidelines, and I think also that maybe some using kind of probably like agent and MD folder or like file additional skills when you push things. So agent will actually really follow your best practices, and also that something you can actually build with your whole team within your organization, right? So then there is no confusion when there's like someone is checking your PR, because actually that was already pre-validated with a couple agents, which is I think another big win, because we can approve PRs probably way faster, and hopefully soon even in an automated way. So
yeah, because you're codifying the best practices of the team that everybody's agreed to, and you're way more consistent, because several of those factors are being evaluated and assessed automatically, programmatically, and then what you get to see is something that's gone through that early rigor already. I'm hoping that's helping everybody. I believe it is. Should we maybe switch back, Jonathan? I know you've been using that PRD to really work hard on that code. Let's see what it looks like.
Yeah, if we could switch back. So I definitely just what I'm showing you here, I wanted to kind of go back to the beginning. It did compact the context, so we don't have it all, but what it did is it basically spawned out multiple sub-agents. You can kind of see each one of these tasks where it was generating different widgets, and it completed all those successfully. There was actually a little bit of fireworks, which was, obviously when you're live, I forgot that I'd run this before, and so there's some existing widgets. And so what was nice to see, I was getting a little nervous for a second, but it worked out well that it able to determine, there's already some existing widgets. I need to go back and list those widgets, figure out what exists, what doesn't, clean that up. So that was something off script, but it was resilient enough to handle that and basically, figure out the right widgets that need to get deleted so it can create these new ones. At the end of
another way, I mean, it sounds like you had probably run this on this fictitious ticket that you created maybe just before this or what have you. And so it was able to identify that, make you panic a bit, but then also resolve itself.
Yeah, it did. I was getting nervous with all those red links, but it was able to figure out and actually, unprompted, was able to go back and list the dashboard and widgets to figure out what existed and not, and cleaned it up. And that's actually another key point is, when you run these, you have deterministic flows and you have non-deterministic flows. And that was one of the ones that wasn't deterministic, but you try to minimize that. And so one of the other techniques that we've done is we actually, use the CLI. Instead of just telling it there's APIs and trying to call that on the fly, we get better results using the DevRev CLI to do those operations, or use the MCP server. So that's the other thing that we're able to do. But basically just wrapping up what it was able to, this is listing all the different widgets, the IDs, and what the dashboards are. It had at the end, it needed to create the dashboard JSON, which contains all those widgets in there. Again, a few little hiccups here and there, but it's able to be resilient to those. We log those errors so we can go back and look at it and improve our skill over time. We try to minimize them. But what we found is it's able to get through them. It's smart enough to kind of, get through all those things. And at the end, it's got this result where it's saying, okay, here's the report, here's all our widgets, and it has a link. So we can actually, just come to that dashboard in the browser. This is actually deployed completely on the DevRev platform. And then we also persistent this locally so we can keep it in the in our repo. We're using the Maple test org, so there's not tons of data. So you might see that some of these widgets, might have more if we, had a very busy org. But it created basically 18 widgets across these different tabs up here. So I didn't do anything. Obviously, I can come in here and tweak and edit them myself. But this is typically a few days of work for an engineer on the Applied AI team. So for us to do that in like 10 or 15 minutes is a massive time savings for us. Oh, sorry. Did you want to say something?
No. I mean, look, I believe it. And a person might say, well, it's a JSON file, and you're able to get widgets and set widgets and create them and define them. And I've actually tweaked this JSON myself as well in the past. Over the few years that we've had dashboards in the system, I mean, you've got 3 or 4 widgets and you do a find and replace. That's one thing. If you got to build them from scratch, there's a lot of code to write, and there's a lot of boilerplate code. Let's be honest, and to be able to turn that into a skill that can be used programmatically is just incredible.
Yeah. And so what's up next is this is dashboards, but we've got already in development snap-ins, workflows, agents, all the other things that we build, connectors, so that we can just save our team time. We can spend more of our human time with the really tough problems that we can automate, or working closer with customers. So at the end of the day, everybody wins.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Peter? Like, what's next for you? Like, I mean, obviously you talked about work trees and how, even just in the last several days, things have gotten way more advanced, and it's helping you save time, because it's not just about the fact that, instead of having to write the code by yourself, you're getting a lot of generated code and you're able to even generate tests and so on and so forth. There's more to it, right? It's about what do you do with that saved time, because you can't just save time, right? That concept doesn't exist. You have to use time. So whatever time was saved in not having to write additional 40,000 lines of code, what do you actually do with that? Like, what does productivity really look like for the modern developer? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think that's something tricky, and we have to all adapt. I think the problem is, like, you can't really do 20 features at the same time. Probably the context switching is really hard, which actually also force us to really push fast to production, or just to kind of really ship, but then kind of, let's say, have the real code really working kind of for on our platform. So I think just optimizing the CI/CD pipelines and just making sure we can actually kind of retest and battle test everything. So again, very often we won't probably have enough bandwidth to check all the PRs or all the codes, right, or all the edge cases. And I think what I'm actually playing right now a bit more also is how we can then merge as fast as we can, but then also keep on monitoring all those changes on the live product, right? And I think now you can just really feedback all the errors from whatever tool you're using back to agent, and also kind of start fixing them automatically, right? So I think also maybe another interesting thing which they've added to the codex here is that they kind of those kind of automations. So you can run every hour kind of checking your Sentry or whatever error monitoring tool you have, and again assess if this is the critical bug. Go even to your repository, check if that's something easy to fix, and just fix it, right? And then you can just have your final PRs, and I can just kind of go and just reapprove them. So I think the whole speed is really changing. You can see 2-3 times more, but I think we have to figure out new workflows to really be able to drink from this kind of fire hose, let's say, which we have right now.
Absolutely. Jonathan, final thoughts from you. I mean, obviously, you guys have already leaned in with skills and plugins, and obviously, you guys are thinking very practically about the types of things that you do over and over and over again, and saying, what, how do we just make this so easy to do that all of our engineers can save time and do all the other necessary things, because the applied AI role is fairly complex. I mean, you have to go beyond building automations and dashboards over to tuning, weights, data, being able to improve search results in some specific cases. So how do we do that? Like, what do you think is next?
Yeah, I mean, so that's what we're looking at right now. And the way we're prioritizing is like, what are the biggest time sucks? What are those really hard manual problems that, beyond just it takes a lot of time, it might be just a terrible developer experience. So how do we minimize that? And these are the types of tools and things, Peter was describing a lot of the same things, what we're using here now with multiple tools, with MCP, with Codex, with Cloud Code, is just finding a way through that. What makes it a better experience for applied AI? And then the end result is, we've got partners now coming on board. We're going to start arming them with the same skills so they can deliver the same value. Besides speed, what it also does is it makes sure it hears best practices, and makes it consistent so that our engineers, if maybe they leave, go to another company, or they're out sick, on vacation, another one can pick it up directly, no problem. Right now, when you don't use the automation and you do them manually, there's still a little bit of art to these things, it's slightly different nuance. And so it's harder to support over time. And so I think there's a ton of great things that are coming out of this in terms of speed, consistency, best practices. And then we'll just keep looking for that next thing. As DevRev's platform continues to improve, we'll have more openings, more things that we can automate and build. And at the end of the day, it just makes our customers, happier, that they can get these things in their hands quickly and at a high quality. And so that's what the automation squad within Applied AI is focused on. It's kind of like helping the two teams build the machine. So all these tools and things help them build the end results for the customers. And, the final result is when we can actually get these in the hands of the customers. I know that's a long ways out, but that's the path that I see us coming over time.
Amazing. And, obviously our team is growing, the engineering team. And in my role, what I've noticed is that we've never seen such an interest in documentation, but this is now documentation that's not really meant to be consumed by humans predominantly. It's going to be predominantly consumed by machines. And so what's happening is it's available now because people know that there's going to be real leverage. And when people know that there's going to be leverage in documentation, they invest in it. And I think that, in companies where people have a documentation culture where they read a lot, I know that they invest a lot in their documentation, but now that goes up, orders and orders of magnitude because the machines are going to be using it all day long to do their work. And what I love about it is the fact that you can also take the same information, today it's markdown files, and in the future it could be other things, but you're able to effectively take that context, which is being organized in folders and what have you. You're able to take that and you can actually even have conversations with it. So if you're a new person that joins the team, you can say, what is this about? What have we done here? What have we learned recently? And you can actually understand what the evolution of our practices look like, because those practices, that context, it's really team intelligence that's being sort of represented in these manifests, if you will. And humans that join the team can come in and actually learn from these files just like a machine could, right? So we're starting to really understand how the new workforce is going to shape itself, and I'm quite excited about it. So to everybody in the audience that watched this, we greatly appreciate your time. As I mentioned earlier, we do have a Discord community where we'd love to see you, and we want to continue to do these weekly, and we'll have more folks from the team join us to have conversations just like this one. So for today, Peter, Jonathan, it's been a pleasure. I know we went a little long, but hopefully this was worth your time, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Ahmed. Thanks so much.
Bye. See you later.
Cheers.
Yep.